Dr. Chaitanya Prakash, Yogi, Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, revered Swami Swatma Ramananda Ji, Mr. Yogan Devan, Mr. Yogan Naidu, Mr. Sipive Mchunu, Mr. Piyush Khandelwal, distinguished guests and online members, welcome to Swami Vivekananda Jayanti celebrations, where today we will be celebrating the birth and life of Swamiji. Swami Vivekananda was born on the 12th of January 1863, born as Narendranath Datta, and was an Indian Hindu monk. He was the chief disciple of the 19th century Indian mystic Ramakrishna. He was a key figure in the introduction of Indian philosophies of Vedanta and Yoga to the Western world, and credited with raising interfaith awarenesses, bringing Hinduism to the status of major world religion during the late 19th century, and was a major force of the revival of Hinduism in India, and contributed to the concept of Indian nationalism as a tool fight against the British Empire in the colonial India. Swami Vivekananda founded the Ramakrishna Mutt and the Ramakrishna Mission, and is perhaps best known for his speech, which began with the words "Sisters and Brothers of America," which he introduced Hinduism at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago in 1893. Today in our midst we have three very renowned guest speakers, and to introduce our first speaker, that is Mr. Yogan Naidu, who is the PRO of the Tungat Hindu Unity Forum and currently an employee of Talcom SA. We welcome Mr. Yogan Naidu for his remarks today.
Om Ayena Vacha Manasendriyairva Buddhyatmanava Prakritir Swabhavat Karomi Yad Sakalam Parasmi Narayanaya Tasamarpayami Narayanaya Tasamarpayami. Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Mahamaya Ki Jai, Swamiji Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Namo Narayana to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to allow ourselves to dissolve in the life and pastimes of one of the most influential saints to have walked the earth in contemporary times. Swami Vivekananda was a relatively unknown monk in the early parts of his life and was born and he grew up in West Bengal. After receiving spiritual instructions and guidance from his master Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, his spiritual mission began as he walked the length and breadth of India. Under colonial rule, India suffered a lot, and the scenes that greeted Swamiji really wrenched his heart. The culmination of his parikrama at Kanyakumari convinced him to participate in the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, 1893. With the blessings of Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi, Swamiji embarked on a journey that would transform an unknown monk into the world-famous Swami Vivekananda. It was at this august gathering that Swamiji first introduced to the world the idea of universal acceptance. In his inaugural address, he said, and I quote, "I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true." This was not merely a gesture of courtesy and respect whilst being in the company of leaders of so many different faiths. It was a genuine expression of his heart and consciousness. His master, Sri Ramakrishna, proved beyond reasonable doubt that all religions lead to the ultimate goal. Although growing up in a colonized India, the Swami never held a parochial view or mindset. Our untrained mind and underdeveloped consciousness relishes in plurality. Race, gender, caste, material wealth, and social standing have been used for ages to discriminate and rule. A few incidences in the Swami's life will demonstrate his universal consciousness. At the time in India, where one would not even dare to take food from a vendor of another religion, in his father's office there were several hookahs for people of different religions and states. He had always been curious as to what would happen if he touched or tried the hookah of a different religion, and to test whether something fatal or irrevocable would indeed befall him. He took a whiff from all the hookahs and extolled to his father how nothing at all happened when he broke the caste rules. On another occasion, Swamiji was staying at a station platform. As you know, in those days in India, the wandering monks used to move about in India, and wherever they could take shelter, they would rest there for at least 3 days. And there, where he was for 3 days, people flocked to engage with him. And in this period, Swamiji had not eaten or taken water. A nearby cobbler noticed this and with devotion approached Swamiji and said that he had noticed he had not eaten, and this pained him a lot. He said that he could offer Swamiji some bread, but his social status did not allow him to do so. He alternately offered to provide the ingredients to the Swami to prepare his own meals. To which the Swami replied, "If those people boast a higher class but overlook humanity, of what use is that? I will have the bread that you have made." On another incident, Swami Vivekananda once told of an incident which revealed Swamiji's superhuman sensibility. Swami Vivekananda used to stay in the room next to Swamiji's at Belur Math. One night, he awoke at 2 a.m., came out of his room, and was surprised to find Swamiji moving restlessly along the portico. Swami Vivekananda asked, "Swamiji, why are you not in bed? Don't you feel sleepy?" "I was sleeping well," said Swamiji, "but suddenly I felt a sort of shock and awoke. I am sure there has been some great accident somewhere in the world where so many people must have lost their lives." Swami Vivekananda did not take Swamiji's words seriously. At first, it seemed incredible to him that Swami, while lying in his bed, could have become aware of such a far-off occurrence. But to his amazement, he read in the newspaper the next morning that many people were killed in a volcanic eruption near Fiji. The eruption had occurred at the exact moment when Swamiji had received the shock. Our former president and father of the nation, Dr. Nelson Mandela, said, "Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is a man-made phenomenon and can be overcome and eradicated by the action of human beings. So, it's man operating at a different mindset that has created a world that thrives off the weakness of others, that has structured a society that would ensure that only a certain class of people prosper at the expense of others. If we continue with the status quo, then it will be impossible for the world to live in peace and harmony. Therefore, the idea of universal acceptance is very important and critical to this ideal. The way to see the world in this light was Swamiji's mission, and he declared that when he said, 'It may be that I shall find it good to get outside my body, to cast it off like a worn-out garment, but I shall not cease to work. I shall inspire men everywhere until the whole world shall know is one with God.' It is only when we can raise our consciousness to beyond the gross differences of the manifest world, to appreciate and realize the subtle consciousness or spirit that permeates the entire creation, will we be able to experience the world through the lens of Swami Vivekananda. Key challenges like racism, poverty, climate change, etc., will dissolve into the universal heart of humanity as leaders in society will act for the benefit of all. We are currently facing a great pandemic of epic proportions, and the irony is that we live in a world where there are many with large amounts of wealth, yet they choose to keep their wealth and watch thousands die. I recall how during the 1898 plague of Kolkata, Swami Vivekananda ordered the sale of the newly purchased land on which the current headquarters is constructed to fund the relief operations. Seeing beyond the progress of his own institution, Swamiji saw the plight of the masses as more important. Let's all dispense with within our means to help in the crisis by donating PPE, oxygen, and medication with the understanding that the fall of society is the fall of ourselves. On this all-important and auspicious day, I pray we continue to be inspired by Swamiji to complete his mission so that every man understands his true relationship with each other and the universe. Jai Swamiji. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yoga Naidu, for that very insightful remarks on Swami Vivekananda, with the theme being Swami Vivekananda, the voice of universal acceptance. Our next speaker is a renowned journalist and writer, and that is Mr. Yogan Devan. Mr. Yogan Devan has been a senior journalist for more than 20 years. He edited the former Indian independent weekly newspaper, The Graphic, for 3 years in the late 80s before joining the Sunday Tribune for 20 years, where he rose to the position of news editor. In the year 1998, he joined the world of corporate communications and is presently the KwaZulu-Natal Regional Director of Maropa Communications, Africa's leading PR and media relations company. He continues to keep his hand on writing. He has a weekly column in the Post newspaper and is respected social commentator. He edited the coffee table tome Glimpses of the Rural Chatsworth, with traces of 60-year-old history of farm Chatsworth when it comprised of banana farms and market gardens. Mr. Yogan Devan serves on several cultural, religious, and educational bodies. We now welcome Mr. Yogan Devan for his remarks today.
Dear viewers, or to paraphrase Swami Vivekananda, my dear brothers and sisters, it gives me immense pleasure to participate in this virtual commemoration of the birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, together with my fellow speaker, Brother Yogan Naidu, PRO of the Tongat Hindu Forum. No name is so endearing to the people of Hindu faith, as well as all those who regard humanity as one large family, as that of Swami Vivekananda, whose 158th birth anniversary falls today, 12th of January. This day is annually observed as National Youth Day by the Government of India, and such is the esteem that this great soul is held in, that the 12th of January is a public holiday. I must commend the Consul General of India in Durban, Sri Anish Rajanji, and Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogiji, Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consul General of India in Durban, for putting together this program to celebrate Swami Vivekananda Jayanti. I must also thank Shristi Arinarayan and Piyush Kandalwal for arranging the logistics for this discussion. The theme for today's discussion looks at Swami Vivekananda as an architect of universal acceptance. It is indeed fitting that the Cultural Center at the Consul General of India in Durban is named after Swami Vivekananda, who espoused the oneness of all races, castes, creeds, and religions. For after all, the Cultural Center is based in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, which is a veritable melting pot of people of different races, creeds, customs, traditions, and cultures. I will not dwell on the early life of Narendranath, later to be known as Swami Vivekananda. I urge all listeners to read about the life and teachings of Swami Vivekananda, even if you read little else for the rest of your life. The greatest influence upon Narendranath's physical, intellectual, and spiritual development was Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who chose Naren from among his many disciples to be his spiritual heir. From his master, Naren learned two main concepts that determined his life pattern, that is, awareness of the divinity in man and an appreciation of the universal religion. The dual purpose was served by the relationship of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. Firstly, the Vedas were resuscitated from the obscurity it had been relegated to by a succession of invaders of India from the days of Alexander the Great, the Mongols, the Mughals, the Turks, right up to the British. and also the modern gospel's proclamation of the oneness of all religious faiths was disseminated to all people by both these great men. After the passing of Sri Ramakrishna in August 1886, Swami Vivekananda spent several years in intense spiritual practices. He gradually realized that he was not meant to live the life of an ordinary recluse, struggling for personal salvation. He was destined to work for the divine mission entrusted to him by his master Sri Ramakrishna. In January 1891, Swami Vivekananda, leaving the company of his brother monks, wandered from place to place in India alone with God. At first he traveled in the north, and later he went in the south, all the while studying very closely the life of the people in every class of society. He wept to see the stagnant life of the Indian masses who were crushed by ignorance and poverty, as well as too much of ritualism and being taken for a ride by priests. He was disturbed by the spell of materialistic ideas among the educated, especially the Maharajas, who blindly imitated the glamour of the West. He saw that spirituality was at a low ebb in the land of his birth. The picture of ancient India came before his eyes, vividly in all its grandeur and glory, and the contrast was unbearable. He visualized that India must become dynamic in all spheres of human activity and spiritualize the life of her own children as well as all mankind. The turning point in Naren's life arrived when the solution dawned upon him in Kanyakumari. It was here on the prominent rock just off the coast that he received his experiences during his wanderings and meditated deeply in India. The past, he was able to look or envision the past India, the present India, the future India, as well as the causes of a downfall and the means of a resurrection. All these flashed through his mind, and he took a momentous decision to go to America to raise funds and return to devote himself for the upliftment of the Indian masses. The Parliament of Religions was inaugurated on 11 September 1893 in Chicago, and it was here, as we've heard, that Swami Vivekananda addressed the audience as sisters and brothers of America, and stressed again and again in the ensuing days the idea of the validity of all religions and their harmony. The earnestness of the great love behind the call touched and thrilled every heart in the audience. On this occasion, he spoke of the creed of tolerance and universal acceptance of his faith, which regards all religions as true, and he ended by sounding the death knell of fanaticism and persecution. The American press sang his glory. In fact, one prominent newspaper confessed, "He is undoubtedly the greatest figure in the Parliament of Religions. After hearing him, we feel how foolish it is to send missionaries to this learned nation." With the Chicago address began the Swami's life of just 9 years of ceaseless toil and superhuman achievement. Was his meteoric career only a passing fanfare? Or did he leave any abiding results, a legacy to India and the world at large? It is important to emphasize that Swamiji's life and work have a twofold significance. He was the first great leader spearheading the modern Indian resurgence and giving the clarion call to his people to rouse themselves from the slumber of slavery and to work for the nation's upliftment. Also, he was an acharya, a preacher of Vedanta, without a distinction of country or nation or religion. Swamiji established the Ramakrishna Mission, the worldwide organization working in a variety of fields to uplift society. While Swamiji worked tirelessly to improve the lot of the masses both socially and economically, his most significant contribution to global culture and reflections on pluralism, which can be defined broadly as the idea that there is truth to be found in many religious traditions, not only in one. He articulated a vision of interreligious harmony and cooperation that is even more desperately needed today than it ever was. He taught that each soul is potentially divine. He said that religion is realization. It is a being and becoming. Doctrines or dogmas, rituals or books, temples or forms were not religion but secondary details. Swami Vivekananda envisioned interreligious relations that would go far beyond the secular ideal of tolerance, where practitioners of diverse traditions merely coexist towards an ideal of universal acceptance. Universalism is a philosophical and theological concept that there is one fundamental truth. A living truth is seen as more far-reaching than the national, cultural, or religious boundaries or interpretations of that one truth. As the Rig Veda states, truth is the one. Sages call it by various names. In his address at the World's Parliament of Religion, Swamiji said of the Hindu tradition, "I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions are true." Swamiji preached that tolerance alone is not enough. We can tolerate someone while ignoring them. But to truly see the divine in all, which is what Vedanta teaches us to do, we must go beyond the minimum requirement of tolerance and move towards acceptance. We must see the other not as the other, but as our very own. This is true acceptance, based on the deep Vedantic insight of the fundamental unity and interconnectedness of all beings. When the world is presently being buffeted by turbulence and uncertainty caused by the coronavirus, which has already claimed almost 2 million lives, our shared vulnerability to the pandemic reveals our common humanity. The notion of pluralism and social inclusivity is epitomized in the Sanskrit phrase Vasudeva Kudumbakam, which means the world is one family. This is also demonstrated in the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which declares, "I am because you are." Ubuntu embraces the idea that humans cannot exist in isolation. No man is an island. We depend on connection, community, and caring. Swamiji said in Chicago, "I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal." Sadly today, that very fanaticism, persecution, and hatred, which Swamiji so profoundly hoped would be ended in his time, is so very evident throughout the world. Clearly, much work remains to be done to realize Swami Vivekananda's fervent hope. As long as there is religious bigotry, and as long as violence is carried out in the name of religion, the need for Swami Vivekananda's vision of universal acceptance is pressing and urgent. This becomes all the more evident when one takes into account the destructive capacities that our ever-increasing technological abilities make available to an ever-widening pool of actors on the global stage. The urgent need to save our world from destruction by promoting the Vedantic vision of universal acceptance compels us, in Swamiji's words, to arise, awake, and stop not until the goal is reached. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yogan Devan, for that deep insight on Swamiji. We've come to the part of our program where we would like to now invite our next guest speaker, and that is revered Swami Swatma Ramananda Ji. Swamiji is the Swami in charge of the Ramakrishna Center of South Africa, Johannesburg. Revered Swamiji has joined the Ramakrishna Mission in the year 1988 and has been actively involved in the organization's multifarious activities ever since. During COVID-19, Revered Swamiji has been directing the nutrition and welfare relief initiatives to assist the poor in fighting COVID-19 pandemic across Johannesburg and Pretoria communities. Destitute families, persons with disability, terminally ill patients, example with HIV and AIDS, and foreign nationals were provided with the nutritional food hampers, hygiene products such as masks, sanitizers, and protective gear, and precautionary measures to prevent infection. During these difficult times, revered Swamiji has been counseling devotees in distress, both locally and abroad. Recently, revered Swamiji has established an international seminar on stress management through neuroplasticity to assist individuals and families to cope with stress. Swamiji is promoting Vedanta through weekly online lectures to an international audience on Bhagavad Gita, Viveka Chodamani, example, the crest jewel of discrimination, the science of worship, and on great master Sri Ramakrishna. We now welcome Swami Ramananda ji for his deep remarks on today's topic.
Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Salutation to the King of Renouncers and Controller of Passion, the Sage Vivekananda, who is Satchit Ananda, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute itself, the spiritual perceptor and remover of all distress. Dear and Sri Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogiji, Director of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, Durban, and all the members of the Consulate. Dear sisters and brothers, it is a great privilege to address you all on the subject Swami Vivekananda, Voice of Universal Acceptance. On this auspicious day of Swami Vivekananda's birthday, who is one of the India's, why India alone, the world's greatest spiritual and social leaders. In recognition to his yeoman service to India and the world, in 1984, the Government of India declared 12th January the birthday of Swami Vivekananda as National Youth Day. Since 1985, the event is celebrated in India every year in an effort to inspire the youth to rise to the values, principles, truths that the great Swami lived for. I think this is quite fitting, as Swami Vivekananda had great passion for investing in the youth because he understood their power as a driving force for social change and growth. So all the messages and teachings and the voice of Swami Vivekananda is not only meant for the youth, but all can get inspiration. Children, middle-aged people, men, women, old, strong, weak, educated, uneducated, everyone can be inspired by his work and teaching, and everyone can be made to feel young at heart. He was one of the greatest thinkers to ever walk the earth. He made significant contributions to almost every major field of study. For example, religion, science, philosophy, economics, arts, literature, poetry, nation building, ethics and morality, education, personality development, freedom struggle and patriotism. Now, freedom struggle. Mahatma Gandhi writes, I had love for the country before. After reading Swami Vivekananda, my love for the country increased 100-fold. What did the great Nobel laureate, the poet Rabindranath Tagore told about Swami Vivekananda? If you want to know India, study Swami Vivekananda. Everything is positive in him. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose told that he was inspired by Swami Vivekananda to jump into the freedom movement. And he used to say, if Swamiji was alive, he would sit at the feet of Swami Vivekananda and learn from him. Swami Vivekananda has influenced every walk of life. He has left no stone untouched. His approach to solve problems are so universal that it is not only useful to the past, but also relevant to the present and for all times to come in future. As Swami Vivekananda himself predicted, his works and teachings will inspire humanity for more than 1,500 years. Though he was a multifaceted personality, the core of his was spirituality. Fundamentally, he was a spiritual personage, spiritual illuminary. Why does his outlook, outreach, work, and teaching universally accepted? Because he was not just a dry ascetic working for his own liberation, a dry philosopher discussing religion, but a man of heart, which bled for the poor, which felt for the humanity, who worked and served the downtrodden and thought always of the welfare of the world. He taught us to love God and also to love human beings. He showed us that loving God is not different from loving and serving human beings. This is the essence, crux of his teaching. His approach to solve problems and inspire development were not just skin deep or superfluous, but would dive deep to the root cause and was holistic always in approach. Now, let me give you some examples from the incidences of his life, whereby we can see how he approached the problems of life and how he would never discriminate between different races. He was always seeing God in every living being. One of the beautiful incidents which moved me is Swami Vivekananda, after he became very popular in America after the great message in the Chicago Parliament of Religion. He was given a rousing reception at a railway station as he was getting down from the train. An African at that time, a poor porter who was an African, came forward to shake his hands with Swami Vivekananda, saying, "Congratulations, I am extremely delighted that a man of my race has attained such great honors. The entire African community in this country feels proud of you." Swamiji eagerly shook hands with the porter and addressed him warmly as, thank you, brother." He addressed him as his brother. He refused to deny he was an African and that he was an Indian. He never claimed that he was an Indian. Swami Vivekananda was insulted, humiliated, and refused entry into many hotels and other places in America on suspicion that he was an African. But he never protested or explained that he was an Indian. A Western disciple once asked him, why did he not tell them he was from India in such a situation? "What?" Swamiji replied. "Rise at the expense of another? I did not come to earth for that." That was the heart. That was the way he approached humanity. No discrimination. He saw God in everybody. Now, another beautiful incident which will touch everybody's heart is Swami Vivekananda, when faced with the same situation like the pandemic now, how did you approach that? So that approach of him can also give inspiration to us during this difficult time of pandemic. What happened then? Swami Vivekananda, after coming from the West, the doctors had advised him rest in Darjeeling. His health was rapidly deteriorating, so his physicians had asked him to take rest. After a few days, he received news that plague had broken out in Calcutta. Swami Vivekananda felt at that time so deeply for the people who were suffering from plague, has been depicted in a letter to Josephine MacLeod on April 29, 1898. In that letter, he said that he had decided to sacrifice his life for the service of the plague-stricken people of the city in which he was born, and that would be the best way to attain liberation or nirvana. Swami Vivekananda, in spite of his ill health, rushed to Calcutta. On reaching, they found that the fear that afflicted the minds of the people of Calcutta was deadlier than the disease itself. People were deserting their homes in sheer panic. Swami Vivekananda understood the gravity of the situation. Now he himself devised or wrote and printed a plague manifesto to dispel their fears and distributed it among all the people there in Calcutta. The manifesto which was distributed among the people, stated that Ramakrishna Mission was there to help them in every way possible. He also decided to open service centers in different parts of the city. But the relief work required much money. When a brother disciple asked Swami Vivekananda where the money would come from, Swami Vivekananda replied, without hesitation, we are monks, we can sleep under the trees and live on alms. If I can save the lives of millions, I do not mind selling the ashrama. He was ready to sell the ashrama, the mutt, whole property, and use that money for serving the plague-stricken people. But Swamiji's declaration revealed his heart, his boundless love and compassion for the fellow men. How much he had to bleed to procure a piece of land for the ashrama, his life's dream. Still he was ready to sell away the mutt, if by that he could help the suffering people. That was the approach to the problems of the life. That was Swami Vivekananda. Now let us go through some of the life-giving teachings of Swami Vivekananda, which were so universal, which will help anybody to come out of the stupor or problem. So by using that, how can we make this world living a living paradise for ourselves and for posterity? How can we use the eternal universal message and wisdom of Swami Vivekananda? There is none whom the message cannot touch and leave untransformed through its love and purity. Let us go through them, some of them which will inspire us. Man, the maker of his destiny. We have the power to make ourselves great. This human body is the greatest body in the universe, and human being the greatest being. None is greater than man, even angels. Man is greater than all animals, even the angels. So these were the wonderful statement of Swami Vivekananda about this human body. Swami Vivekananda tells that if we can make this statement of Swami Vivekananda, which is so profound, by breathing and living it every day, we can achieve anything and everything we wish to. What more do we need when we ourselves are the greatest being and in possession of the greatest instrument, our bodies? Now, another great statement of Swami Vivekananda is to be noted, that in the chapter Man, the maker of his destiny, Swami Vivekananda tells we are responsible for what we are and whatever we wish ourselves to be. We have the power to make ourselves. If what we are now has been the result of our own past actions, it certainly follows that whatever we wish to be in future can be produced by our present actions. So we have to know how to act. So my future, my destiny is in my own hand. Learn to work in the present. How to work in the present, and you can make your own future. That's the great word of Swami Vivekananda. Then Swami Vivekananda believed in unswerving faith in oneself. Always think of infinite strength which is already within yourself. Strength is life, weakness is death. Think of infinite strength, infinite zeal, infinite courage and infinite patience. Only then will great thing be achieved. About faith, Swami Vivekananda tells that faith in God, faith in oneself, faith in ourselves. Before telling faith in God, Swami Vivekananda tells faith in ourselves, faith in God. This is the secret of greatness. If you have faith in all 330 million of your mythological gods, and in all the gods which foreigners have now and again introduced into your midst, and still if you don't have faith in yourself, there is no salvation for you. Never think there is anything impossible for you, for the soul. It's the greatest heresy to think so. If there is sin, this is the only sin, to say that you are weak and others are weak. Whatever you think, you will be. If you think you are weak, weak will you be. If you think yourself strong, strong will you be. What a wonderful statement of Swami Vivekananda, which will give so much of strength to us. Then Swami Vivekananda statement about the concentration of mind. The main difference between men and animals is the concentration of the mind, is the difference in the power of concentration. The difference between man and man, another man, also constitutes the difference in the power of concentration. So more this power of concentration, the more knowledge is acquired. Therefore, train the mind, therefore, thereby increasing the power of the mind. Use this concentrated mind and achieving our goal in life. Let us make this mind a powerful instrument which works for us and becomes our best friend in need. Now, how to set our goals? It's very important in our life that we should set our goals properly. We have to work properly setting our goals. We have to plan our life, isn't it? Now, Swami Vivekananda is telling that take up one idea. Think of it, dream of it. Make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, let it run through every vein of yours. So we could set goals for ourselves. How could we become better students, better neighbors? How can we become better ourselves at work, etc.? Whatever roles we are currently in, how could we do better and better, become superior versions of ourselves in our life? If you could think, dream, and live on that one idea with complete faith and sincerity, we will certainly reach and realize it. Now, we have heard so many wonderful teachings of Swami Vivekananda. Now, if we can concentrate on these ideas of Swami Vivekananda, put them into practice, we can become heroes in our own right, in our own lives, by imbibing and becoming imbued with knockout punches of Swami Vivekananda's teaching. Let us awake, arise from our stupor, and stop not until the goal is reached. Let us become the instrument of faith, strength, fearlessness, with our goal ever in sight. Now, we were thinking about our subject, Swami Vivekananda, the voice of universal acceptance. Swami Vivekananda became really accepted universally after he gave his message to the world in Chicago in 1893 at the Parliament of Religions. He declared what a wonderful broad idea of his religion he told about Hinduism. He declared he was proud to belong to the religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. And Swami Vivekananda told, we believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. What a broad expansion, what a broad way of telling about religion. He tells, what is religion? Religion is a process by which a brute is raised unto man and man unto God. So scientific and logical. It tells, transforming we human beings who are living at the brutal level, impulsive, instinctive, to raise ourselves to the intellectual level, the humane level, and from there, from the intellectual level to the intuitive level, to the divinity, to become God ourselves. That is religion. What a broad way to express it. So finally, quoting one of the beautiful statement of Swami Vivekananda, I will give an end to my talk. This life is short. The vanities of the world are transient, but they alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive. So we shall, all these life-giving statements of Swami Vivekananda's, let us strive to practice. As Swami Vivekananda used to tell, an ounce of practice is better than tons of theories. Let us put it into practice. As he used to tell, Vedanta should be practical Vedanta. He coined that word. So the sacred and the secular has to be combined. Work and worship has to be combined. Work and worship. Work is worship. Work as worship. This is the idea given by Swami Vivekananda. How to attain liberation, salvation, God? By serving the humanity. This is a wonderful part shown by Vivekananda. We will all practice it. Time is too less in this world to live, so we cannot waste our life on just enjoyments and sensual gratification. This life is short. The vanities of the world are transient. They alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive. Let us bring all these universal teachings of Swami Vivekananda into practice in our life and be blessed. We will not only get peace and joy in our own life, also bring peace and joy to everybody. Thank you. Namaste. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat.
Thank you so much, Swami Swartma Ramananda ji, for your very knowledgeable and deep insight on today's topic and on Swamiji. We've come to the conclusion of today's program, and that is the Swami Vivekananda Jayanti celebrations, and I'd like to now introduce Mr. Sipiwe Mchuno of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban to render this afternoon's vote of thanks. Sipiwe ji.
Namaskar. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, it gives me a great pleasure to give a vote of thanks today for program Vivekananda Jayanti with the theme Swami Vivekananda, Voice of Universal Acceptance. Good people, please allow me to thank our online guests who were narrating the achievement and the great successive stories of our beloved Swami Vivekananda. Indeed, all our speakers, there is no any other stories that they were saying about our Swami Vivekananda. They were only narrating about the good news. They were also narrating that Swami Vivekananda was preaching tolerance and acceptance. So to our online guest today, Sri Yogen Naidu, PRO, Tongat Hindu Forum, and Sri Yogen Devan, a journalist and a writer, and our Swami Satamamanandaji of Krishna Center in Johannesburg. Dhanyavad to all of you. We like to say it was a great story that you narrated about Swami Vivekananda. We really appreciate whatever you said. We stored it in our hearts. To all of you, our guest line online speakers, I'm saying in Hindi, Dhanyavad ji to all of you. To our director, Director Chaitanya Prakash Yogi of Director Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Durban, Ms. Sristi Harinarayan, Sri Piyush Khandelwal, our online viewers for taking part on today's program. We'd like to say to all of you, Dhanyavad, thank you very much for taking time. We know you have a busy schedule, but you have decided to be with us on today's program. Lastly, to all our online viewers, we'd like to say, please visit our Facebook page so you will be updated about all our Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center Durban cultural upcoming program. On that note, you were such a wonderful online guest. To all of you, I'm saying have a blessed day, have a good evening. Namaskar.